The clock is ticking as America edges closer to a government shutdown. In less than 3 weeks, the government will hit its borrowing limit unless Congress raises the debt ceiling.
House Republicans may use the battle over America's massive debt as an opportunity to delay Obamacare. Here's reporter Charlene Israel.
It comes down to Obamacare, Republicans determined to toss it.
Defund this bill that isn't working, that's hurting the American people, that's killing jobs, that's forcing people into part-time work.
Democrats pushing back, saying the health care law is non-negotiable.
You can huff, you can puff for 21 hours, but you cannot blow the Affordable Care Act away.
After a Senate vote to amend the bill to keep the government and Obamacare funded, the plan then goes back to the House.
The American people don't want the president's health care bill, and they don't want the government to shut down. Republicans are listening.
Meanwhile, the government will hit its borrowing limit on October 17th unless Congress raises the debt ceiling. Republicans see that as a big opportunity, and they may use it to ask for a one-year delay in implementing Obamacare. But the president says he won't negotiate. He argues the debt ceiling has never been used to negotiate non-debt matters.
No Congress before this one has ever in history been irresponsible enough to threaten default, to threaten an economic shutdown, to suggest America not pay its bills just to try to blackmail a president into giving them some concessions on issues that have nothing to do with the budget.
According to the Washington Post, that isn't true. They point to at least 25 times that in the mid-70s and 80s that Congress has used the debt ceiling to force concessions by the White House. And that seems to be exactly what the current Congress intends to do.
The president says, I'm not going to negotiate. Well, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, today is a strange day. The Washington Post criticizing a Democrat president, but that's what's happening. I think that the quickest way to get over Obamacare is to actually let it go into effect. And when the average American starts seeing the impact, particularly Americans aged 27 to 40, who'll bear the brunt of it, then we'll see the change. And I wish Capitol Hill would start arguing about the budget and getting the budget under control and getting it to balance. That way we're not into these never-ending budget ceiling battles. We can actually live within our means and not have to borrow. 17 trillion is a huge number and will take decades to pay off. If we keep adding to it, it'll keep growing and growing exponentially. Well, while Capitol Hill argues over the budget, the Obama administration is also negotiating with Iran. John Jessup has that story from the CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Gordon, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Iran's foreign minister. It's the highest level of contact between the U.S. and Iran in 6 years. The U.S. and members of the UN Security Council have agreed to restart talks on Iran's nuclear program. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani has adopted a more moderate approach than his predecessor, but the U.S. remains skeptical that Iran's supreme leader will actually allow a change in course.
Literally, while he is talking Western leaders to death, Iranian leaders are going to develop weapons of mass death. That's the plan here.
President Obama and other U.S. officials say Iran must prove its commitment with actions, not just words. The Reverend Billy Graham has added his voice to those calling for the release of Pastor Saeed Abedini. Abedini is a U.S. citizen serving 8 years in prison in Iran for his Christian faith. Graham sent a letter to Iran's president urging him to free Pastor Abedini. On Thursday, prayer rallies were held across the country. Members of Congress and the State Department attended a rally outside the White House. A State Department Deputy Assistant Secretary said their thoughts and prayers are with the pastor and his family as they work to bring him home. An evangelical bishop from South Sudan has won an award from the Clinton Global Initiative. Bishop Elias Taban was a child soldier during Sudan's bloody civil wars. He endured a brutal and impoverished childhood, but he came to know Jesus Christ as his Savior and now spreads the gospel throughout Africa.
If I had not accepted Jesus as my personal Savior, I don't know what would happen, brother. That's also a question for myself. And because of this, I keep on thanking Jesus for accepting me as a sinner and delivering me from my sins.
Bishop Taban has also provided key humanitarian assistance across the newly formed country of South Sudan. You can see the entire interview on the Brody File at cbnnews.com. Gordon, I had the opportunity to meet Bishop Taban a couple of years ago here in D.C. He is a man with a compelling life story, a heart for Jesus, and really his desire is to work towards reconciliation across racial and tribal lines.
Well, congratulations to Bishop Taban for this wonderful recognition of his work. And I consider his work in South Sudan for community development all geared around providing fresh water. He gears it on the supply of fresh water to a village, is a model not just for Africa but for all developing nations as a way to lift villagers out of poverty, get them out of disease, and get them into a productive lifestyle. It's wonderful work, so congratulations.